The Mazda CX-30 remains one of the favorites in a very crowded field of subcompact crossovers for the value, for the interior, and for the fact that it just is a little bit more fun to drive than a lot of the competition, especially when you're talking about this price point. For 2024, we see some incremental improvements with some actually pretty decent upgrades here. We'll go through those as well as go through this car from the inside out as always and talk about what it's been like to live with for the last week. Let's go ahead, take a look. Underneath the hood, there are two different ways you can power your CX-30. You can either get the naturally aspirated 2.5 liter direct injected 4-cylinder, or there is this version, which is the turbocharged 2.5 liter Skyactiv-G 4-cylinder. That's such a mouthful to say, but this one makes 250 horsepower, 320 pound-feet of torque, which is a ton for something in this segment, especially. Well, it's a ton in general, but when you're talking about something that only weighs 3,500 pounds and is made to commute, it's really quite a bit of power. And that is if you are running premium gasoline. Now, that is not required, but you do lose a little bit of power, a little bit of torque. You'll go down to about 227 horsepower and about 310 pound-feet of torque if you are running regular gasoline. Fuel economy ratings here, 22 city, 30 highway in this one. That does go up if you're in the naturally aspirated version, but for that one, you're going to lose quite a bit more power, though 186 horsepower, 186 pound-feet of torque is quite a bit still, even if you are in that naturally aspirated version. And that one will actually use cylinder deactivation as well, where it can actually deactivate some of the cylinders exactly as it sounds as you're driving to get a little bit more fuel efficiency out of it, whereas this turbocharged version does not use cylinder deactivation. And the power is going to go through all four wheels because all-wheel drive is standard here. Now, it is not a full-time all-wheel drive. We'll talk about that a little bit more during the drive portion. And we're going to be mated to a 6-speed automatic transmission, the one that Mazda uses in pretty much everything these days. The CX-30 remains squarely in the subcompact crossover classification here at about 173 inches overall. Nice short wheelbase at 104 inches. Really great for maneuverability if you live in a more urban environment. Great for parking in the city. This color here is called Soul Red Crystal Metallic, and that is really the only color you need to remember. It's one of the best colors in automotive right now. Now, there is a new color here for 2024 called Zircon Sand. If you watched my Miata video, then you saw what that color looks like. That is going to be exclusively on the brand new carbon turbo trim level for the CX-30 here in 2024. Now, this one is the Premium Plus, so it's going to be loaded up with features, but actually most of the stuff I'm going to mention here is standard really on most of the trim levels other than maybe the base. You do have keyless access with the lock on the outside and touch to unlock on the inside. We've got integrated turn signals here. These are heated. The driver's side will power tilt when you go into reverse. And this one being the Premium Plus, that driver's side is also auto dimming. We got the roof rails on up top here on most of the trim levels as well, with the black cladding because that's just a thing now here in 2024. Not my favorite, but that is what it is. We got 18-inch wheels on this one. Unless you're in the base, then you get the 16s. And no matter what trim level you get, these wheels are going to be wrapped in all-season tires. And you're going to get the same brakes no matter whether you get the regular naturally aspirated engine or if you get the turbocharged version. Front end here, we got the signature Mazda look going on with the gloss black in here and the nice silver around the lights. These are the signature LED lights because we are in one of the premium trim levels here, and otherwise you're going to get LED lights anyway, but these are the signature version, and these will actually be adaptive. They will turn with the steering wheel. I love that more and more automakers are putting that in their cars, and especially at this price point, that is a great feature to have. We do have some parking sensors going on down here. We've got your front camera going on. This one actually does have the full 360 just because this is the Premium Plus. That is the only way to get the full 360 view. Lots of cooling in through here, lots of cooling down there. You can see the intercooler poking through since this one does have a turbo. Nice contour through here. Really great looking front end. Mazda really does a great design, and it is very cohesive across the lineup. Great looking back end here with the black and the red and the silver all working together. We've got these LED combination taillights are going to be LEDs no matter what, but these are the signature LEDs because this is one of the premium trim levels here. Got the rear wiper blade. Always love to see that on a hatchback or wagon or crossover like this. All of them are going to be all-wheel drive, all the CX-30s now. So we do have that badge and the turbo badge on the other side, of course. Got some parking sensors down here, nice big exhaust tips. This is actually a power lift gate. I can't say I was necessarily expecting that in the subcompact crossover from Mazda. That opens up into 20 cubic feet of space. That's going to be on par with the Mazda 3 since this is essentially a lifted Mazda 3 here, about 8 inches of ground clearance on this one. 60-40 split back there. You can get a privacy cover. This one obviously does not have it. Underneath here, we do have your jack. You got your subwoofer inside of the spare tire. Love to see that there is actually a spare tire, not just a fixed flat kit. And I love that this is a power lift gate here. Nice and easy. On the inside of the CX-30, this is one of the places where Mazda really tends to shine. They punch way above their price point here in terms of interiors. We're sub $40,000. This is nicer than some of the $60,000 cars I've been in recently. What they really do well is all the touch points, all the visual points are very nice. They do still have some of these hard plastics and stuff down here, you know, down in areas where like the bottom of the door and down under here where you're not really looking at that, not really going to be poking around there a lot. And then everything that you see, everything that you typically touch is going to be a nicer feeling surface. Now this is the Premium Plus, so that's why we've got the leather trim everywhere. It's really anything with premium in the name is going to give you the leather. Otherwise, there's a leatherette in the base. You get a cloth. There's a red interior if you get the carbon trim. There's a terracotta if you get the carbon turbo. It'll make your head spin if you go between all the different trims and figure out which matches to what. I wish it were a little bit simpler. Just here are your exterior colors, here are your interior colors. But I'm sure that some of that has to do with manufacturing, if not all of that. But here in the premium trim levels, you're going to get either a black or a white leather. These seats are super comfortable. I wouldn't get white typically just because I have kids, I have a dog, I would make a mess of it, but you can get black and you can get the white. If you want, it does have sort of a more premium feel to it. These are power adjustable, bolstered very well. They're heated only. There is no ventilation. Not really surprised. A lot of times the subcompact crossovers here don't get all of the same features that you get when you go up into some of the bigger cars, really the mid-size crossovers. And those 3 rows are a lot where you get a lot of the more premium features. But we still do have heat. We do have a heated steering wheel here in the premium trim levels. Nice leather wrap steering wheel, very comfortable. This sort of thin, elegant Mazda steering wheel. Buttons are laid out well. There are quite a few buttons and switches on here. They do it in a way that's very intuitive and they're easy to use. Got the paddle shifters for that 6-speed auto. The gauge cluster is laid out very nicely. I love that they still have analog gauges. Even if the middle one is digital, it looks like an analog gauge. You got a little bit of information you can swap around in there. They did a good job of keeping this sort of very clean and easy to read. There's not a ton of extra information though that you can swap through like in a lot of the newer cars, the big digital clusters, but I do like how clean and easy it is to use. Got the heads-up display again because we are in one of these premium trim levels. Do have some of this gloss black going on over here and all around here. Not my favorite there, just for all the fingerprints. There are a lot of companies out there offering aftermarket solutions where you just pop all this trim up and put something else in, like a carbon fiber or just a flat black or something. So luckily, if you're like me and you hate fingerprints and dust and little micro scratches, then you do have an option to swap that out. You have memory seats in this one. We've got the Bose sound system, the 12-speaker upgraded sound system. Again, because this is one of the premium trim levels, you can activate your 360 camera from over here. That is because we are in the Premium Plus. That is the only way to get the 360 camera. Got the auto dimming mirror here with HomeLink in the premium trims. You got buttons and switches down here and these nice little knobs for your HVAC controls. Love that that is still physical buttons, all easily accessible down here. The infotainment here is the new 10.25-inch screen with wireless Android Auto and wireless CarPlay. I'm going to be honest, I did not expect that to be wireless here in the subcompact crossover here for Mazda. So that was a nice surprise to see that. And so if you have the wireless Android Auto, wireless CarPlay, you also have the wireless charger down here. So those are always paired together. And I love having that pair together because that means you don't have to plug in. You throw your phone in there, you get everything connected and you're charging and everything is good to go. Now, this does have this sort of command center thing going on with, the Mazda likes to use where all your controls are down here. This is actually a touchscreen for the Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, but not for everything else. Most people I've talked to that own a Mazda say you get used to it, they love it. They would never want to go back to a traditional touchscreen. It's one of those things, maybe after a week I'm not super used to it, but a lot of people, once they buy the cars, they swear by it. So I'm not going to dig too much into that control panel command center thing here, but I will say with the Android Auto being touch now, it does make things a little bit simpler, but this is still not set up for touch. If I'm reaching, I have to reach pretty far here. I have to lean over maybe to get to what I want here because there's a little ridge here and it's just not placed well. It's very far away. So it's not easy to use the touch. You can use the scroll on Android Auto for most of the menus, but there are a couple of things on the menus where I couldn't figure out how to get to them, and the only way was to touch. A lot of people have been crying for touch screens here in the Mazda, but it doesn't really work if it's difficult to get to. So I will say that, but I do, overall like the system. It's a fine system. It's easy to use once you get used to the scroll wheel and all of that. We got the vents all the way across. You do, again, we have these nice leather trim surfaces. The passenger seat is manually adjustable no matter what trim, even in this top spec where I have Premium Plus in the name. This one gets all the power adjustability, but the passenger is still a manually adjustable seat. You got the moonroof here. It's just a nice little short moonroof that is actually available in most of the trim levels. I do wish that it went all the way back, but it is nice that you don't have to go up very many trim levels just to get that. This piece is kind of funny here. It'll tell you who's got their seatbelt on, who doesn't have their seatbelt on, whether your passenger airbag is on or off. And there's a spot for the third row here. So you got your front passenger, 3 across in the second row and 3 across in the third row. I hope that there's nobody in the third row because in this car, you can barely fit anyone in the second row. There are no seats in the back. Second row, very tight space. The spec sheets say 36.1 inches. Feels a lot tighter than that. Forward-facing seats are okay. My kids are almost 5 and almost 7. And their feet are kind of uncomfortably close to the seats here. Rear-facing seats are going to be really tight. You're really going to have to shove this passenger seat way forward if you have a rear-facing seat back there. They've got the center armrest with the cup holder. They do have their own vents back here. And then we got a little bit of extra space here. This slides and tilts. We got some USB-Cs upgraded from USB-As in the last year's model. And then my only real issue with the interior outside of the gloss black is these cup holders up here. They're kind of out of the way, but since there's a surface right here, if you have something taller, like this, I can fit in the door, which is nice. But if you have a taller cup here, it's not going to sit flat. It's going to kind of bang against that and it's going to be a little bit tilted. So that's really my only kind of issue here, other than, the infotainment is tough to reach. You got this gloss black going through here and then this cup holder, but that's really, if you have a smaller cup, regular size coffee, you're going to be probably okay. It's just really these taller cups, this America problems we got going on here. When it comes to the driving experience, here is another place where Mazda tends to excel, especially at this price point. We're talking sub $40,000. actually a little bit fun and interesting to drive. Usually you have to go up into like an X3 or a Macan or something that is a lot pricier if you want a little bit more performance and actually something that's a little bit engaging, a little bit more fun to drive. Whereas this one, it's got tons of power, 250 horsepower, 310 pound-feet of torque for something this small. A subcompact crossover is great. It's nice and peppy. If you're in normal mode, it will kind of hold itself back. It'll try to ease you on the throttle. But if you pop it into sport mode with the switch down here, then it'll just get out of its own way super quickly. No issues there. It's actually pretty quick, pretty peppy here. And the steering actually gives you a little bit of feedback. Again, a little bit more engaging than you would get in a lot of these cars at this price point, where you get this video game light steering. Just feels like you're not doing anything at all. You could turn the wheel with one finger. I'm not saying this is heavy. It's not going to get exhausting, but it is a little bit of feedback, a little bit of extra resistance, and it just makes you feel like you're a little bit more involved here. Then if you pop it into sport mode, it gets a little bit heavier as well, and it handles really nicely. You know, the steering is nice and direct, nice and quick, especially when we're talking about this subcompact crossover class here. And even though we do have the torsion beam rear suspension, we have that McPherson front strut, the same setup that is in the Mazda 3 here. It does have a nice short wheelbase, so that helps quite a bit. A little bit of body roll. Again, with the short wheelbase, it is going to roll a little bit more, but it's certainly not anything super uncomfortable or anything like that. And it does ride pretty nicely here. We are still, again, talking about sub $40,000. Let's say for the price point, it rides well. It's not going to ride like a Lexus. It's not going to ride like a Rolls Royce or something, but for the price point, it actually rides pretty decently here, even on the bigger wheels here, the 18s. And same goes with the noise. You know, on the highway, it does get a little bit loud in here. It is not a luxury car. They are trying to push up market a little bit here, but it still does not sound like a luxury car when you're on the highway. Most of the time around town, it's going to be totally fine, but the price point matches the level of sound you're getting here when you're on the highway. Got the same 6-speed automatic transmission that Mazda uses in pretty much all of their cars at this point. It has been fine. You know, I do wish it did have a few more gears, maybe help a little bit with the efficiency. For the most part, it's done its job. There were a couple of times maybe where it downshifted a little bit later than I would have liked it to. For the most part, again, for the commute, it has been totally fine. If you want to go into full manual mode, you can, and pop this over so it doesn't go back into drive, but I feel like most people probably are just going to let the car do its own thing. If you put it into sport mode, it'll get a little bit more aggressive there with the transmission, but for the most part, you know, it's been fine. It's stayed out of its own way pretty well. For driver's assist and safety here, we do have quite a few features. Mazda's features do kind of tend to get in the way sometimes, where it's better though, I guess, that it's a little bit overprotective than underprotective. A couple of times where I went to turn and it thought that somebody was in my blind spot because somebody was just over a little bit more than they weren't like directly behind me, so I thought someone was in my blind spot. I was going to turn left and it beeped at me, things like that. It does have cruising and traffic support, which is new for Mazda. That actually debuted with the CX-90 that I was in that a couple of weeks ago. And that cruising and traffic support is basically like radar cruise with your lane centering. In the past, Mazda has had sort of a similar system. It's not exactly the same. In the past, it's been like you basically have radar cruise, and then you have this, it looked like a similar symbol here where it had the little steering wheel, but really it was a lot more bouncy. It wouldn't keep you in your lane very well. I don't think that was quite the same. This is sort of the next evolution of that, and this one keeps you centered in your lane quite a bit better. It's still not nearly as good as like the Volkswagen, the Honda, the Lexus 3.0, Toyota 3.0, BMW. Some of those other systems, Hyundai, Kia, really are at the top there, but it is definitely a major improvement over the last one, the last generation of this system. And that is only because we're in the Premium Plus trim. That is the only way to get that system here in the CX-30, but that is new for 2024. We have the heads-up display or active drive assist because this is one of the premium trims. All the ones with premium in the name will get you that, and that has current speed, speed limit. You'll have your directions if you got your directions going, even if you're using Android Auto here like I am right now. now. I still have directions up through here. It's got the traffic sign recognition. It'll tell you if you're using your cruise control, what you have it set to. It's one of those it's one of those things where it's not too cluttered. It's got just the right information. Definitely a good job here from Mazda with their heads-up display. In the past, sometimes it's just been like just your speed. That's not really super helpful. It's convenient, I guess, but it's not super helpful. This one here, they've really evolved this into something that's really a lot more helpful than it used to be. And the biggest thing in there is it has the blind spot monitoring. I love that they have the blind spot monitoring in the heads-up display, because that means that you don't have to take your eyes even off the road a little bit. A little extra peace of mind, a little extra help to know that somebody is there. And if somebody is in your blind spot and you hear your turn signal, give you a nice little chime. It's not overly harsh, but it'll give you an idea that somebody is there. Visibility all around is pretty good in the back with the headrests up. It's a little bit tough to see out that back window just on the sides, but for the most part, visibility sides and back is pretty good, especially again, if you get those headrests off, that will help quite a bit. Now, because this is the Premium Plus, we have the front brake support, rear brake support, and rear cross traffic brake support, which means that if something is coming across behind you, it'll actually help brake. And if something is directly in front of you, you're about to hit it, or directly behind you, you're about to hit it, it will help brake for you to help actually avoid the crash. Now, I mentioned that it could use a few more gears just for a little bit of extra efficiency. I've been getting about 22 miles per hour combined. It's supposed to be 22 city, 30 highway. Again, that gets better if you're in the one that doesn't have the turbo. And really, the one without the turbo, the version of this without the turbo, is still plenty peppy. It's got plenty of power. If you really just kind of have a lead foot, or you're used to something with a little bit more power, then the turbo is definitely the way to go. But you do lose that fuel economy here. I tend to get a little bit worse than those estimated ratings, and so I'm down at the bottom of the city estimates here at about 22. And this one is all-wheel drive. I mentioned it is the only way to get the CX-30 now is in all-wheel drive form. It's not like a full-time all-wheel drive. Most of the time you're gonna be in front-wheel drive, which is better for efficiency. Then there are all these sensors all over the place, basically constantly deciding whether or not you need to get the rear wheels involved. At the end of the day, we have a Mazda that delivers on exactly what it set out to do. You have a nice look, a nice interior, a great price here for everything that you get, and it's just a little bit more fun to drive than a lot of the competition at this price point. Definitely worth taking a look if you're looking for something that is very compact with a little bit of a lift. As always, make sure to hit all the YouTube buttons down below. Let me know if I missed anything or if you have any opinions on this car. I hate to be that YouTuber that always asks for you to hit all the buttons, but the like and the share really do help me get into more cars, bring more cars to you. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.